You've seen them everywhere, right? These perfect jewel box houses that pop up on your social media feeds. They whisper a promise of a different kind of life, a life free from a soul-crushing mortgage, free from piles of stuff you don't need. The tiny home movement. It's positioned as more than just a trend. It's pitched as a full-blown revolution, a silver bullet for the housing crisis and your personal ticket to a simpler, more intentional way of living. But what really happens when the camera stops rolling? What's the truth behind the curated photos? Are we looking at a legitimate solution here? Or is this just a beautiful fantasy, one that comes with some very big, very real-world complications? Today, we're going to cut through all that hype and get to the bottom of it.
And this, right here, this is the core of the dream. This is the powerful idea that has captured the imagination of millions. I mean, think about it. It's an incredibly compelling story, isn't it? The idea that you can just opt out, slash your cost of living, dramatically shrink your environmental footprint, and unlock the kind of freedom that lets you live life on your own terms. It flies in the face of the bigger is always better mantra that has driven our housing market for generations. And let me tell you, that dream isn't just inspiring a few people to pick up a hammer, it is fueling a legitimate multi-billion-dollar global industry.
Okay, we have a lot to unpack here, but before we really jump into the deep end, a quick but important note. If you get any value out of explainers like this one, do me a favor and take a quick second to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. It honestly makes a huge difference and allows us to keep making more of this content. And on a related note, if you're looking for a real estate agent in your market or you need life insurance, my team and I can help you anywhere nationwide. Just check out the links down in the description. All right, let's do this.
So here's the game plan for today. First, we're going to really explore the dream itself. What's the big idea? Then we'll follow the money, because the numbers behind this boom are staggering. From there, we pivot to the big reality check, the major, and I mean major, hurdles that people run into. But it's not all bad. So next, we'll look at the specific areas where these homes are actually working wonders. After that, we'll put on our investor hats and analyze the financials. And finally, we'll deliver our verdict. Is this a lasting boom, a passing bubble, or a permanent niche in the housing market?
All right, first things first. Before we can analyze the market or the problems, we have to get on the same page. We need to be crystal clear on what we're actually talking about. So what exactly is a tiny home, and what's the fundamental idea driving this whole movement?
So the single most important defining feature is, of course, the size. We are talking about a living space that is typically between 80 and 400 square feet. Now, to give you some perspective, the average two-car garage is right around 400 square feet. So imagine your entire life fitting into that space. But these aren't just glorified sheds. They are designed to be fully functional homes with kitchens, bathrooms, and sleeping areas. And they generally fall into two categories. You have stationary models, which are built on a permanent foundation just like a traditional house. And then you have the far more common mobile versions, often called a THOW, or tiny house on wheels, which are built right onto a trailer chassis.
You know, a movement like this doesn't just spring up out of thin air. It's a direct response to some massive economic and cultural shifts. The number one driver, without a doubt, is the housing affordability crisis. For a huge portion of the population, especially younger generations, the classic dream of owning a traditional home feels completely out of reach. That reality directly fuels the second driver, the intense desire for financial freedom. The appeal of living without a 30-year mortgage dictating every life choice is incredibly powerful. Then, you layer on top of that the growing cultural movements towards sustainability and minimalism, and the final ingredient, the absolute explosion of remote work, which has untethered millions from the need to live in expensive cities. You put all that together, and you have the perfect storm for a housing revolution. So, the dream makes sense. The appeal is obvious, but now let's pivot from the philosophy to the financials. Let's look at the hard data, because this has evolved way beyond a few idealists building cabins in the woods. This is a serious economic engine now. So, just how big is the tiny home market? Well, the numbers might surprise you.
And this right here is the engine driving absolutely everything. The sticker shock is real. The median price of a traditional single-family home in the United States has soared past $410,000. Now look at the other side. The average professionally built tiny home can range anywhere from $30,000 to $130,000. For someone who feels completely locked out of the traditional market, that gap isn't just a discount, it's the difference between being a renter for life and actually owning the roof over your head. It's a game changer.
And that massive price chasm is creating an absolutely massive market. Just look at this number, $33.2 billion. That's the projected value of the global tiny homes market by the year 2035. Let that sink in. This has moved so far beyond a niche hobby. We are talking about a significant, global industry with serious corporate players, sophisticated builders, and institutional investors all taking a very close look. And this chart shows us exactly where it's headed. It's not a flash in the pan. The market is projected to hit nearly $23 billion by 2025, and then grow by another $10 billion in the following decade alone. That represents a compound annual growth rate of nearly 4%. Now, what that signals is not a speculative crypto-style bubble. It's a sign of real, deep, and persistent demand that market experts believe will continue for the foreseeable future.
And while this is a phenomenon that's happening worldwide, the trend has a very clear epicenter. North America by itself accounts for over half of the entire global market, 55%. And this makes perfect sense when you connect it back to the sky-high housing costs and the deep-seated cultural emphasis on homeownership in places like the United States and Canada. The demand here is, to put it mildly, completely off the charts.
Okay, so the dream is compelling. The market is absolutely booming. It sounds like the perfect solution, right? A win-win. So why isn't every other house you see a tiny home? Well, this is the point in the story where the beautiful Instagram fantasy collides hard with cold, bureaucratic reality. The path to tiny living, as it turns out, is littered with huge and often deal-breaking obstacles. And just a quick heads up here, as we dive into some of the more complex issues, if you find yourself needing some expert guidance on your own real estate or insurance journey, remember to check out those links in the description. My team is ready to help no matter where you are in the country. Now let's get into the problems. This is the single most important question you have to ask yourself. The idea is brilliant, the price is right. I mean, it all seems a little too good to be true. And you know what they say? If it seems too good to be true, it probably is. The catch here isn't just one simple thing. It's a tangled, frustrating mess of legal, financial, and intensely practical problems that you are definitely not going to see in the glossy sales brochure.
So all of these problems really fall into four major buckets. The first, and by far the biggest, is zoning and building codes. In other words, where on earth can you legally put one of these things? It's a bureaucratic nightmare. The second is financing and insurance. How do you pay for something that isn't quite a house and isn't quite an RV? The third is the day-to-day reality of it all, the practicalities of what it's actually like to live in 200 square feet for years, especially if you have a partner, a pet, or a family. And finally, there's a unique risk that comes with a home on wheels, security, and the very real risk of theft.
And here we are, the root cause of almost every single major problem. It all comes down to a simple, and for many, a devastating question of legal classification. To your city's planning department, and more importantly, to your bank, if your home is on wheels, it is not a house. It's a recreational vehicle, an RV. And that single legal distinction acts like a wrecking ball. It means you can't get a traditional 30-year mortgage. It means you can't just buy a beautiful plot of land in the country and legally live on it. It shoves the entire movement into this murky, legal gray zone, creating a domino effect of obstacles that stops most aspiring tiny homeowners cold in their tracks.
Now, after hearing about all those hurdles, it would be really easy to just write off the entire concept as a failed experiment. But that is absolutely not the full picture, because when we shift our focus and look at specific targeted applications, tiny homes are proving to be an incredibly powerful and innovative tool, a tool that is actively solving some of our society's toughest housing challenges.
Now this is where it gets really exciting, because what's so interesting here is the sheer variety of these successful models. In cities like Seattle and Portland, tiny home villages are providing safe, dignified transitional housing for people experiencing homelessness. Down in Texas, you have entire master plan communities being built specifically for retirees who want to downsize and live in a community setting. We see them being used for large-scale social housing in Austin and even as a creative way to add desperately needed micro-apartments and rental units in dense urban centers like Philadelphia. It proves that tiny homes aren't a one-size-fits-all solution, but they can be the perfect solution when applied in the right context.
Let's just pause and focus on this one example, because it is truly extraordinary. Community First Village in Austin, Texas is not just a collection of tiny houses. It is a 27-acre, fully master-planned community. It provides permanent supportive housing for over 300 residents who were once chronically homeless. And get this, rent can be as low as $220 a month. The village includes community gardens, health clinics, and even job opportunities right there on site. It is, without a doubt, the nation's premier example of how this concept can be scaled up to create profound, lasting, positive change in people's lives.
So, we've seen the incredible social impact these homes can have. But what if you're looking at this through a purely financial lens? What if you're an investor? Is buying a tiny home a smart real estate investment?
Let's break down the pros and the cons, because the investment math here is very, very different from a traditional piece of property. So for any potential investor, the crucial point is understanding this fundamental trade-off. It's a balancing act. On one side of the scale, tiny homes can be absolute cash flow powerhouses. Because the upfront cost is so low, the return on investment from rental income, especially when used as a short-term Airbnb-style vacation rental, can be massive. But on the other side of the scale, you have appreciation, or more accurately, the general lack of it. Because they're so often classified as personal property, like a car or an RV, they typically depreciate. They don't increase in value over time the way a traditional house and the land it sits on almost always does. This table really puts it all in black and white. Look at the numbers. Purchase cost, monthly utilities, they're all just a tiny fraction of a traditional home's expenses. And that is exactly why the potential for high cash flow as a short-term rental is so strong. But then you get to that last line, appreciation, and that's why the traditional home is the undisputed long-term champion. So as an investor, you have to know what game you're playing. A tiny home is an asset you buy for income now. A traditional home is an asset you buy for long-term wealth creation later. They are two completely different strategies.
Okay, we've looked at the dream, we've looked at the big money, the harsh realities, the incredible success stories, and the investment case. So now it's time to put all those pieces together and finally answer the big question we started with. Where does the tiny home movement really stand today? Is it a passing fad, a dangerous bubble about to pop, or a permanent fixture in our housing landscape?
And here it is, the bottom line, based on all the evidence. The tiny home trend is absolutely real, and it is not going away. Why? Because it's anchored by the undeniable and, frankly, worsening economic pressure of the housing crisis. But, and this is a very, very big but, its potential for growth currently has a hard ceiling. Without fundamental, sweeping changes to local zoning laws and the models for financing, tiny homes will remain a significant, important, and growing niche. They are not, under the current set of rules, going to replace traditional housing at any meaningful scale.
And that leaves us right here, with the ultimate question. The demand is there, the innovation is there, we have proven successful models showing that this can work on a massive scale to solve real problems. The single biggest barrier isn't technology, it isn't desire, it's policy. The future of this entire movement and its ability to break out of its niche and truly help solve our housing crisis rests almost entirely in the hands of city planners, local councils, and state lawmakers. The real question is, will they have the vision to adapt? Thank you for watching, and one last time, if you're looking for guidance on your own real estate or insurance needs, you know where to find us. The links are in the description. We're here to help nationwide.